Captain Jonathan Jax Harrison gazed over the barren landscape of Hesperia through the reinforced glass of his command center. The harsh winds kicked up dust devils, painting a stark yet strangely mesmerizing picture of this frontier world. Beside him, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Marco Silva, shuffled through digital blueprints displayed on the holographic interface. "Jax, look at this," Marco said, tapping on a section of the hologram. The survey team stumbled upon something big underground. Metallic structures, possibly pre-colonial. Jax raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. Pre-colonial? On Hesperia? Let's get a team down there pronto. Could be something left from the first wave of explorers. Gathering a team of engineers and security personnel, Jax led the expedition to the excavation site himself. The air was thick with anticipation as they descended into the depths of the newly discovered chamber, their lights piercing the darkness. "What do you think it is, Captain?" asked Sergeant Leah Kim, her voice echoing slightly off the metal walls that surrounded them. "If I had to guess, I'd say military," Jax replied, running his hand along the cold, dust-covered surface of the object. As the rest of the team set up portable lights, the chamber was fully illuminated, revealing a colossal cannon-like structure. It was an impressive sight, the craftsmanship speaking of an era when humanity was first reaching out into the stars with hope and bold determination. "Never seen anything like this," Marco muttered, both in awe and disbelief. Jax walked up to the control panel, a relic in itself, covered in analog switches and rusty dials. "This is a gun. A giant gun. From the look of it, I'd say it was meant to be our last line of defense in the early days. But why build something this massive here, and why was it buried and forgotten?" Leah pondered aloud. "No clue, but let's get some power to it. This might just be the edge we need," Jax declared, his mind already racing with possibilities. As the engineers worked, Jax and Marco strategized. They knew that Hesperia, with its untapped resources, would not stay off the radar of other civilizations for long. The news of any significant find would surely draw attention, not all of which would be friendly. "We need to be prepared," Jax said firmly. "If the Vrillon catch wind of this, they'll come. They always do when there's a whisper of power to be had." Marco nodded, his expression grave. "And we'll be ready. With this cannon, maybe we can hold them off, buy enough time for the fleet to back us up." By nightfall, the cannon had been partially restored to operational status. Jax stood before his team, their faces lit by the soft glow of emergency lights. "This weapon," he began, "represents more than just firepower. It's a symbol of human ingenuity and the will to protect our own. We don't know if it fully works or what we're truly up against, but this gives us a fighting chance." The team nodded, their resolve hardened by their captain's words. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but with the relic now in their arsenal, they at least had a shot at defining their own fate under the vast, indifferent stars. Jax ended the meeting with a simple command. "Let's get this beast ready for a real fight." Their work continued into the hours of early morning, each team member driven by a shared purpose and a newfound sense of duty to defend their outpost, their home. As the first hints of dawn colored the sky, Jax couldn't help but feel that they had just awakened something powerful, something that might very well alter the course of their future. The calm that had settled over Hesperia's human outpost was abruptly shattered when the radar alarms blared through the control room. Captain Jax Harrison and Lieutenant Marco Silva rushed to the main console, where a young technician, Ensign Riley, was frantically adjusting the settings. "What's the status, Riley?" Jax demanded, his voice tense. "Multiple inbound signals, Captain. They're coming in fast. Vrillon signatures, no doubt about it," Riley reported, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. Marco clenched his jaw. "They didn't waste any time, did they? Seems like they knew exactly when to hit us." Jax's gaze hardened as he studied the rapidly approaching blips on the screen. "Get everyone to battle stations. This isn't a drill." As the outpost buzzed into action, Jax and Marco headed to the observation deck, where they could get a visual on the incoming threat. In the distance, the dark silhouettes of Vrillon warships pierced the horizon, their sleek forms cutting through the planet's thin atmosphere. "They look like sharks, don't they? Circling around for the kill," Marco muttered, watching the alien fleet with a mix of awe and apprehension. Jax nodded, his mind racing. "Let's hope our big gun is more of a deterrent than we are appetizers." Preparing for the worst, Jax called for Sergeant Leah Kim, who was coordinating the outpost's defensive strategies. She arrived, her expression grim but resolute. Leah, status report on the cannon, Jax ordered. It's operational, Captain, but it's old tech. We can't guarantee a perfect shot, Leah reported. That'll have to do, Jax replied. Get the engineers to keep tweaking. Every bit of extra power counts. Outside, the first of the Vrilon ships entered a low orbit, launching smaller fighters that began descending towards the outpost. The air crackled with the hum of energy weapons charging, a prelude to the storm about to break. Jax turned to his communications officer. Open a channel. Let's see if they're in a talking mood. A few tense moments passed before the Vrilon commander appeared on the screen. His features were reptilian, eyes cold and calculating. I am General Thrak of the Vrilon Empire. You are harboring technologies that belong to the Vrilon Dominion. Surrender them, and your lives will be spared, the alien commander declared, his voice a low hiss. Jax stepped forward, his posture unyielding. This is human territory, Thrak. We haven't forgotten the last time you made promises. The cannon stays with us. Thrak's smile was thin and menacing. Foolish human. Do you really believe your relic can stop us? We don't believe, Thrak. We know, Jax retorted, cutting the transmission abruptly. Get everyone ready. This is going to get ugly, he said to Leah and Marco, who nodded, already moving to carry out his orders. The first wave of Vrion fighters swooped down, launching a barrage of plasma bolts at the outpost's shields. Explosions rocked the ground, sending vibrations through the soles of their boots. Jax watched the chaos unfold, his heart pounding. Leah, it's now or never. Fire the cannon. With a deep breath, Leah relayed the order. A moment later, the ground shook as the ancient cannon, powered by all the outpost's available energy, roared to life. A brilliant beam of light shot forth, piercing the sky. The lead Vrion ship, caught in the path of the beam, had no time to maneuver. The impact was devastating. The ship disintegrated into a fiery ball of debris that rained down onto the planet's surface. Silence followed the explosion, both sides momentarily stunned by the display of power. Marco let out a low whistle. Guess they're not laughing now. Jax didn't smile. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the rest of the Vrion fleet was regrouping, their next move uncertain. This was just the opening salvo. Get ready for their response. As the outpost braced for a counterattack, Jax knew the true test of their resolve was just beginning. The battle for Hesperia had only just ignited, and every moment following would determine the fate of not just his crew, but potentially all of humanity on this alien frontier. The aftermath of the Relic cannon's initial discharge was a mixture of awe and horror. The air over Hesperia crackled with residual energy, and the ground was littered with the charred remains of the first Vrion warship. In the control room, Captain Jax Harrison watched as the alien fleet momentarily halted their advance, their formations disrupted by the unexpected destruction of their lead ship. Riley, what's their status? Jax asked, his eyes never leaving the screen displaying the Vrion ships. Scans show confusion in their ranks, Captain. They're regrouping but haven't made any aggressive moves since the blast, Riley reported, his voice tinged with cautious optimism. Good. Keep monitoring them. Any change, I want to know immediately, Jax commanded, then turned to Lieutenant Marco Silva. Marco, how are we on ammo for another shot? Marco grimaced, tapping through the inventory lists on his tablet. We can manage a few more shots, but each one depletes our reserves significantly. We need to be strategic about when to fire. Jax nodded, understanding the weight of each decision now resting on his shoulders. All right. Hold fire until my command. We need to make each shot count. Outside, the calm was eerie. Sergeant Leah Kim, stationed at the perimeter with her squad, watched the horizon warily. Through her binoculars, the remaining Vrilon ships appeared as ominous silhouettes against Hesperia's dusky sky. She keyed her comms, reporting back to Jax. Captain, they're staying put for now. Looks like the shock gave them something to think about. Stay sharp, Leah. This is the calm before the storm, Jax responded, his voice steady. Back in the alien fleet, General Thrak seethed with rage. The destruction of his lead ship was not just a military setback but a personal affront. His scaly hands clenched into fists as he ordered his fleet commanders to plan a full-scale assault. Prepare all squads for a ground invasion. We will not be mocked by these primitives, he barked over the comm. The order was met with a chorus of affirmations, the Vrilon warriors eager to restore their tarnished honor. As the preparations began, the sky darkened with the deployment of numerous smaller craft, all descending toward the human outpost. Jax, watching the movement from the outpost's sensors, felt a chill run down his spine. They're coming. All hands, brace for a ground assault. Marco, get the cannon ready to fire on my mark. As the Vrillon fighters approached, the outpost's defenses sprang to life. Automated turrets and stationed troops opened fire, creating a web of bullets and energy beams that lit up the night. The first wave of Vrillon troops landed, engaging in fierce combat with human defenders. Explosions and cries of battle filled the air, a chaotic symphony of war. In the thick of the battle, Leah directed her troops with precision, her voice a calm command amidst the chaos. Hold lines! Focus fire on the eastern flank! Jax, observing the battle unfold from his command center, saw an opportunity. Leah, pull your squad back to Sector 4. Lure them into the cannon's line of fire. Copy that, Captain. Falling back now, Leah acknowledged, signaling her team to retreat strategically. As the Vrillon pursued, their ranks became aligned perfectly with the cannon's trajectory. Jax watched, his finger poised over the fire command. His heart pounded, the gravity of the moment weighing heavily on him. This shot had to be perfect. Fire! Jax ordered. The cannon roared once more, its beam cutting through the battlefield and striking the advancing Vrillon forces. The ground where they stood vaporized in an instant, leaving a gaping crater and sending a clear message. The humans would not yield so easily. Cheers erupted in the control room and across the defensive lines, the human soldiers bolstered by their captain's successful strategy. But the celebration was short-lived. Jax knew this victory was just one more step in a larger battle for survival. The war for Hesperia was far from over, and each moment brought them closer to the next decisive clash. In the aftermath of the devastating second strike from the Relic cannon, the human defenders of Hesperia found themselves in a rare moment of respite. Captain Jax Harrison surveyed the smoldering battlefield through the command center's panoramic windows, his face etched with both relief and concern. The Vrillon's initial assault wave had been obliterated, but he knew that the war was far from over. Report, Jax commanded, his voice echoing slightly in the suddenly quiet command room. Lieutenant Marco Silva, who had been coordinating the logistics of ammunition and power management for the cannon, turned from his console. The last shot was effective, Jax. It took out a significant number of their ground forces. However, our energy reserves are now critically low. We might not have enough for another full-power shot. Jax nodded gravely. Then we'll need to be smart about our next move. Riley, keep scanning for any signs of another attack. I want to know the moment they twitch. Yes, Captain, Riley responded, his eyes locked on the sensor readings that flickered across his screen. Outside, Sergeant Leah Kim regrouped with her squad, tending to the wounded and consolidating their positions. The brief victory had bolstered the morale of her troops, but the reality of their situation was grim. Ammunition was low, and the energy needed to power the base's defenses was dwindling. Captain, Leah's voice crackled over the radio. We're set up for another defensive line, but we're running thin on ground resources. Any word on reinforcements? Jax paused, his mind racing through their options. Reinforcements are still hours away. Hold your position, Leah. We have to make every shot count. As the human defenders fortified their positions, the Vrillon forces were regrouping with a newfound caution. General Thrak, humiliated by the losses and the unexpected resistance of the human outpost, was now personally overseeing the strategy for the next wave of attack. In the dim light of his command ship, Thrak convened with his top advisors. These humans are more resourceful than we anticipated. We cannot afford underestimations any longer. Prepare the elite units. I want those defenses breached. Back at the human outpost, Jax and his team discovered an unexpected advantage. While analyzing the data from the cannon's last firing sequence, a junior engineer, Specialist Emily Santos, stumbled upon a forgotten subsystem within the cannon's architecture. Captain, you need to see this, Emily reported, her voice tinged with excitement as she brought up the schematics on the main display. It looks like the cannon has a secondary firing mode, less power-intensive but more precise. We could use it to target specific threats. Jax leaned over the schematics, his mind working through the tactical implications. Good find, Emily. Get this operational. Marco, coordinate with Emily. Let's make sure we can use this to our advantage. With renewed focus, the team worked to recalibrate the cannon, adjusting its output to utilize the newly discovered firing mode. The outpost buzzed with cautious optimism as they prepared for the next confrontation. Meanwhile, the Vrillon, now wary of the humans' unexpected capabilities, launched a series of smaller, more cautious probing attacks. Each skirmish tested the outpost's defenses, a deadly game of cat and mouse under the harsh skies of Hesperia. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the alien landscape, Jax stood beside the cannon, its surface still warm from the earlier discharge. He knew that the night would bring more challenges, but for the first time since the siege began, there was a glimmer of hope. With the cannon's new capabilities and the courage of his crew, they just might hold out until help arrived. "Prepare for another long night," Jax told his team, his voice steady. "They won't stop coming, but neither will we. We fight for every inch." As darkness enveloped the outpost, the defenders stood ready, their resolve as unyielding as the metal of the cannon that protected them. The battle for Hesperia was entering a new phase, and each moment was a testament to human determination and ingenuity. As night enveloped the planet Hesperia, the alien Vryon forces prepared for their most aggressive push yet. General Thrak, seething with a mix of rage and grudging respect for the humans' tenacity, had ordered a massive mobilization. Hover tanks and elite squads lined up, their engines humming a low, menacing tune against the cold backdrop of the alien night sky. Inside the human outpost, Captain Jax Harrison watched the satellite feeds, which displayed the gathering forces. The weight of command pressed heavily upon him, knowing each decision could very well be his last. Lieutenant Marco Silva stood beside him, eyes glued to the screen, counting the dots that represented the enemy. "They're not holding back anymore," Marco muttered, tension lining his features. "No, they aren't," Jax acknowledged grimly. "But neither will we. Prepare all sectors for a full assault. I want every gun manned and every shield at maximum power." As the human defenders scrambled to their positions, Specialist Emily Santos worked feverishly on the cannon's recalibration. The secondary firing mode they had discovered offered a glimmer of hope, a precise, less resource-draining option that could provide them with the edge they needed to survive the night. "Captain, the cannon's ready," Emily reported over the comm. "Secondary mode is operational. We can target specific threats without draining all our reserves." "Excellent work, Emily. Stand by for targeting orders," Jax responded, his voice a calm anchor amid the storm of activity. The first wave of the Vryon assault began with a barrage of plasma artillery, bright arcs of destructive energy raining down on the outpost shields. The ground shook under the relentless pounding, dust and debris kicked up into the night air. Sergeant Leah Kim, commanding the ground forces, shouted orders through the din, directing her troops to counterfire and maintain the perimeter. "Steady, people! Hold your positions!" Leah yelled, her voice amplified against the chaos. "Watch your sectors!" The Vryon advanced under the cover of their barrage, ground troops moving in tight formations as they breached the outer defenses. The human troops, battle-hardened and resolute, met them with fierce resistance, their gunfire punctuating the night with deadly intent. In the command center, Jax watched the unfolding battle with intense focus. "Emily, target the hover tanks on the eastern flank. Take them out before they breach the second perimeter." "Target locked and firing," Emily confirmed. The cannon hummed to life, its beam now a focused lance of energy that streaked across the battlefield and struck the hover tanks. Explosions lit up the night as the Vryon vehicles disintegrated under the precise hits, throwing the enemy lines into temporary disarray. Cheers broke out among the human defenders as they witnessed the success of the cannon's new mode. The victory was short-lived, however, as more Vryon troops poured into the fray, undeterred by the loss of their armor. Jax felt the tide of battle shifting and knew they needed to maintain momentum. "Keep hitting their heavy assets, Emily. Marco, make sure our lines hold. I'll be right there." Strapping on his helmet, Jax left the command center to join his troops on the ground. His presence bolstered their spirits as he took up arms alongside them, fighting back the invaders with every round they had left. As dawn approached, the battle raged with unabated ferocity. The Vryon, realizing the humans would not easily yield, intensified their efforts, unleashing yet more troops and weaponry. But the humans, fueled by desperation and the strategic use of their cannon, held their ground. Each explosion from the cannon's beam became a beacon of defiance, each successful strike a testament to human ingenuity and courage. Under Jax's leadership, the defenders of Hesperia fought not just for survival, but for the future of humanity in a galaxy that had often been less than welcoming. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, both sides momentarily paused, the battlefield a stark landscape of destruction and resolve. Jax, covered in dust and grime, stood among his troops, their faces weary but determined. The siege would continue, but for now, they had held the line, their hope for victory burning as brightly as the fires that raged around them. The relentless siege on the outpost had pushed Captain Jax Harrison and his defenders to the brink of exhaustion. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long, sharp shadows across the battered landscape of Hesperia, it illuminated the scars of the night's brutal conflict. Craters pockmarked the earth, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of burnt metal and ozone. In the command center, Jax reviewed the overnight reports with Lieutenant Marco Silva and Specialist Emily Santos. Their faces were etched with fatigue, but their eyes burned with an unyielding fire. "Status report," Jax demanded, his voice raspy from a night without rest. "We held the line, Captain, but barely," Marco reported, scrolling through digital maps littered with markers indicating Vryon troop movements. "The enemy is regrouping faster than we anticipated. We've spotted heavy artillery being moved to the front lines." Emily chimed in. "The cannon's secondary firing mode was effective, but our energy reserves are critically low now. We can maybe squeeze out a couple more shots before we're completely drained." Jax nodded, processing the grim news. "We need a game changer. Any word from Fleet Command on reinforcements?" Marco shook his head. "Still hours out. We're on our own until they can make the jump to Hesperia." Jax's gaze hardened. "Then we'll make our stand here. Prepare for the next wave. I want every available man and woman on the line. We fight to the last." Outside, Sergeant Leah Kim rallied the troops, her voice carrying over the din of preparations. "Listen up. We've held them off this long, and we will keep holding. Every second we fight is another second closer to reinforcement." Her words bolstered the weary soldiers, who took up positions behind sandbags and makeshift barricades, their weapons at the ready. As the Vryon commenced their next assault, a monstrous barrage of fire rained down on the outpost. The earth shook, and the sky was lit with the continuous flashes of exploding shells and energy beams. In the command center, Jax and his team monitored the situation, directing fire from the cannon strategically to take out the largest clusters of Vryon forces. Each shot was a calculated risk, depleting their precious reserves but buying crucial time. The Vryon were relentless. General Thrak, enraged by the resistance he faced, personally oversaw the advance, his presence on the battlefield emboldening his troops. "Push forward! Crush them under our might!" he roared, his voice amplified across the field. As the battle intensified, Jax received the update he had been dreading. The energy reserves for the cannon were nearly depleted. "Emily, make every shot count. Target their command units. If we can cut off the head, the body will falter." Emily nodded, her fingers dancing across the control panel, lining up the final shot. As she fired, the cannon's beam struck true, obliterating the Vryon command vehicle in a spectacular explosion. The impact on the Vryon was immediate. Confusion spread through their ranks, their advance faltering without direction. Jax seized the moment, leading a countercharge to push the disoriented enemy back. "Charge! Now! Push them back!" Jax shouted, leading his troops from the front. The human defenders surged forward, their cries fierce as they met the enemy in close combat. The battle raged through the day, with neither side yielding an inch without a fight. But the human resolve, fueled by desperation and the slim hope of survival, began to turn the tide. As the sun began to set over Hesperia, a wave of cheers erupted from the human lines. In the distance, the first of the reinforcements could be seen entering the atmosphere, their arrival heralded by the thunderous roar of their engines. General Thrak, realizing the turning of the tide, ordered a retreat, his forces withdrawing under the cover of dusk. Jax watched them go, his body aching and his heart heavy with the cost of their victory. "We held," he said quietly to Marco and Leah, who stood by his side, equally battered but alive. "We held." As the reinforcements landed, bringing new energy and hope, Jax knew this victory was just a beginning. The Vryon would regroup and return, but for now, Hesperia was secure, and humanity had once again proven its courage under fire. The battle was over, but the war for their place in the galaxy was just getting started. In the aftermath of the intense battle, the dust settled over Hesperia's scarred landscape. With Vryon forces temporarily retreating and human reinforcements strengthening their position, Captain Jax Harrison finally had a moment to reflect on their narrow escape. Exhausted yet vigilant, he convened a strategy meeting with Lieutenant Marco Silva and Specialist Emily Santos in the command center, their faces lit by the soft glow of screens displaying tactical data. "We've bought ourselves some time, but that's all it is. Time," Jax stated, examining the latest satellite imagery. "The Vryon will regroup. We need a long-term solution." Marco nodded, scrolling through the reports of ammunition and resource levels. "Our reserves are replenished somewhat with the reinforcements, But if they hit us with everything they've got, it won't be enough. Emily, who had been analyzing the cannon's performance data, looked up. There's something else. The cannon's last shot revealed a fault line in its power core. It can't sustain another high-powered blast without risking catastrophic failure. Jax frowned, pondering the dire news. So, we're essentially sitting on a ticking bomb. Is there any way to fix it? It's possible, Emily replied, but we'd need time and resources better spent on fortifying the base and our defenses. Jax leaned back, processing the situation. All right, let's pivot our strategy. We use the cannon for smaller targeted strikes only. Keep the Vrillon guessing and off balance. We can't outgun them, but we can outsmart them. Marco and Emily agreed, quickly beginning to implement the new directives. Meanwhile, outside, Sergeant Leah Kim briefed the troops on the adjusted battle plan, emphasizing stealth and cunning over brute force. We're not just fighting for survival anymore, Leah told her assembled soldiers. We're fighting to win. Stay sharp, stay smart, and let's show them what humans are made of. As the days passed, a tense peace enveloped Hesperia. The human forces used this time to strengthen their defenses and refine their tactics, turning the outpost into a fortress. Jax kept a close eye on Vrillon movements, predicting that the next encounter would be decisive. It wasn't long before his predictions proved accurate. The Vrillon launched a massive assault, clearly intended to be the final blow. As enemy ships filled the skies, Jax issued the orders to engage using guerrilla tactics, hitting fast and retreating quickly. The human forces, revitalized and better prepared, executed Jax's orders with precision. Emily controlled the cannon, taking out key Vrillon assets with surgical strikes that conserved energy and minimized risk to the core. Each successful hit was met with cheers from the human defenders, their spirits lifted with every small victory. As the battle raged, Jax received an urgent message from command. The main Vrillon fleet, including their flagship, the fearsome Starbreaker, was approaching. The Starbreaker was rumored to possess enough firepower to obliterate the planet itself. With a grim resolve, Jax realized that their final stand was imminent. Prepare for a full engagement, he commanded. This is it. We either stop them here, or we lose everything. The human forces marshaled their strength, and as the Starbreaker entered orbit, a palpable tension gripped the outpost. Jax coordinated with his commanders, planning to use the cannon in a way they hadn't dared before, a direct strike on the Starbreaker itself. With the Vrillon flagship in range, Emily made the necessary calculations, targeting the massive ship. Captain, we're ready. It's now or never. Jax gave the nod, his voice steady. Fire! The cannon roared to life, its beam brighter and more powerful than ever before. The shot, fueled by desperation and the fierce will of a cornered humanity, struck the Starbreaker with unerring accuracy. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as the beam penetrated the flagship's shields and tore into its core. Then, as if in slow motion, the Starbreaker exploded in a blinding flash of light, its debris scattering across the sky like the remnants of a vanquished nightmare. A deafening silence fell over Hesperia. Jax, Marco, Emily, Leah, and every human soldier watched in disbelief as their greatest threat disintegrated before their eyes. We did it, Marco whispered, the reality of their victory sinking in. We did, Jax confirmed, a mix of relief and sorrow in his voice for those lost. We did it. The fall of the Starbreaker marked the turning point in the war. With their flagship destroyed and their forces in disarray, the Vrillon's resolve crumbled. What followed were negotiations, led by Jax, that would eventually lead to a tenuous peace. As the sun set on Hesperia, casting long shadows over the once besieged outpost, the remaining Vrillon forces began their retreat. Around Jax, his team and soldiers celebrated, their cheers a release of weeks of pent-up tension and fear. We did it, Jax repeated, allowing himself a small smile as he watched his exhausted but exuberant team. The victory was bittersweet, bought with the sacrifices of many and the haunting memories of close calls. Yet it was a victory nonetheless, a testament to their resilience and strategic ingenuity. In the days that followed, Jax led the efforts to secure Hesperia, turning it from a provisional military outpost into a beacon of human strength and diplomacy. The Vrillon, humbled and weakened, had no choice but to recognize human sovereignty over Hesperia and several other disputed territories. As peace negotiations proceeded, Jax found himself at the forefront, not just as a military leader, but as a symbol of human determination and strategic prowess. The Relic cannon, once derided as an antiquated piece of technology, stood now as a symbol of what humanity could achieve against overwhelming odds. In the quiet moments after the celebrations had faded, Jack stood by the cannon, looking up at the stars. The battle for Hesperia was over, but he knew the galaxy was a vast and complicated place. Today's allies could be tomorrow's adversaries, and new challenges would inevitably arise. Yet for now, Hesperia was safe, and humanity had carved out a place for itself among the stars. Jax felt a deep, satisfying fatigue wash over him, a warrior's rest earned by facing the abyss and not blinking. As he turned to walk back to the command center, he carried with him the knowledge that when called upon, humanity could and would stand its ground. This was their new beginning. In the wake of their monumental victory, the atmosphere within the human outpost on Hesperia shifted from tense survival to cautious optimism. Captain Jax Harrison had become more than just a military leader. He was a symbol of human grit and strategic brilliance. As he walked through the base, his presence bolstered the morale of everyone from the highest-ranking officers to the newest recruits. Lieutenant Marco Silva, now acting as Jax's second-in-command for all strategic operations, approached him with an update. "The Vrillon are retreating across all fronts, Jax. It looks like the destruction of the Starbreaker has sparked a full-scale withdrawal from their occupied territories." Jax nodded, taking in the news with a sense of deep relief mixed with the fatigue of long, sleepless nights. "Prepare a detailed status report. I want to understand our position fully as we negotiate the terms of their surrender." Marco acknowledged with a sharp salute. "Will do, Captain." As Jax made his way to the strategy room, Specialist Emily Santos approached him with a tablet in hand, displaying the latest scans of the cannon. "Captain, the cannon is stable but permanently offline after that last shot. It's a relic of the past now, in every sense." Jax looked at the silent behemoth that had saved them all. "Let it stand as a monument then," he decided, "a reminder of what we faced and what we overcame." Emily smiled, a mixture of sadness and pride in her eyes. "I'll make sure it's preserved properly, Captain." The negotiations with the Vrillon leaders were tense, but the power dynamics had shifted irrevocably in favor of the humans. Jax sat across from the Vrillon emissaries, his gaze steady and uncompromising. "This conflict began because you underestimated us," he began, his voice firm. "Let this peace be a recognition of our sovereignty and a commitment to mutual respect." The Vrillon, chastened and seeking to regain some of their lost honor, agreed to the terms laid out by Jax. Boundaries were redrawn, and commitments were made to engage in trade and cultural exchanges. The treaty would later be known as the Treaty of Hesperia, a landmark in human-alien relations. After the negotiations, Jack stood outside, looking up at the stars. The night sky, once a harbinger of alien threats, now promised new adventures and possibilities. Beside him, Sergeant Leah Kim joined him, her voice soft. "What are you thinking about, Captain?" Jax turned to her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "About all those who didn't make it to see this victory. About what comes next." Leah nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "They'll be remembered, Jax. As for what comes next, we face it like we did this, with courage." "Yes," Jax agreed, "with courage, and with the knowledge that no matter what comes our way, we can handle it. This victory isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. About making sure that humanity continues to grow, learn, and reach out into the universe with open hands and sharp minds." As the celebrations began to fade, Jax prepared for the next phase of his command. The future was uncertain, filled with as many challenges as opportunities. But he knew that the spirit of Hesperia, the spirit of overcoming impossible odds, would guide humanity forward. Under the stars of a once hostile planet, Jax Harrison, once a captain of a besieged outpost, now stood as a leader of a new era for humanity, a time of growth, peace, and exploration. Hesperia was secure, and humanity's place in the cosmos was, at last, firmly established. The outpost would grow, perhaps one day becoming a bustling hub of interstellar activity. But for Jax, it would always be the place where humans showed the universe their determination to not just survive, but to prevail and prosper.